Now back to Psalm 45, 1 to 7, which speaks of the war in Revelations 19. Psalm 45, verse 2 talks about Jesus. Now listen. Grace is poured into thy lips. Grace is power. Grace is power to do something without fleshly effort. The power was in the mouth of Jesus. That is why Revelations 19:15 says, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. The sword came out of his mouth. So this is not fleshly effort. Psalm 45 2. It says, grace is poured into thy lips. An extraordinary and superhuman ability is put in your lips. Psalm 45 3. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O most mighty. Amazingly, Revelations 19:16 says, and on his thigh, a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Psalm 45, verse 4 now. And in thy majesty, we already established him as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, so he has majesty. And in thy majesty, ride. Alluding to Jesus seated on a white horse in Revelations 19 with many crowns on his head going into battle. Psalm 45, 4. And thy right hand shall teach thee terrible things. Alluding to the fact in Isaiah 63, 5, where Jesus said, and I looked and there was none to help, and I wondered that there was none to uphold. Therefore, my own arm brought salvation to me. Psalm 45, 5 now. Thy arrows are sharp in the heart of the king's enemies. How did David know that Jesus will avenge God of his adversaries? How did he know that Jesus will go to battle against God's enemies? David was a prophet. Psalm 45, 5. Psalm 45, 5. Thy arrows are sharp in the heart of the king's enemies, whereby the people fall under thee. Now, the people fall under thee is also a resemblance to Isaiah 63. What was said in Isaiah 63, verse 6? I will bring down their strength to the earth. Now, Psalm 45, 5 says, whereby the people fall under thee. Bring down their strength to the earth, the people fall under thee. Psalm 45, 7 says, thou lovest righteousness and hatest wickedness. Therefore, God, thy God, has anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows. Isaiah 63, 1. Jesus introduces himself as I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Revelations 19:11 says, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. 45, 7. Thou lovest righteousness. Isaiah 63, 1. I that speak in righteousness. Revelations 19:11. And in righteousness he doth judge and make war. Psalm 2, verse 6 to 9 also mirrors Revelations 19. I like the fact that God usually confirms his word with further word. So he doesn't contradict himself. He says things and corroborates it with his word too. That's just very, very that's a character of integrity. It makes you trust his word. He's not fighting against himself. Let's look at Psalm 2. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Now listen, they are imagining a stupid thing, winning against God. Like, that's not possible. Psalm 2 verse 2 says, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, verse 3, let us break their bands asunder. Oh, so you admit that God has bands on you, restricting you from doing certain things. He has bands on you, so you are not the omnipotent person you're not the omnipotent person you claim to be. So when you hear people say God is in control, he's actually in control. Listen, the kings of the earth and the rulers, they had bounds on them that God had put on them. They were trying to rebel, to break it away. So they had cords, chains binding them. This is intelligence. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Now, what happened in Exodus 17:8? Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Overinflated self-esteem. You want to fight against the people of God, indirectly fighting against God. Revelations 19:19, another kind of rebellion. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the throne. How foolish. No wonder he laughed at them in Psalm verse 2. Ah, God. God laughed when he saw the foolishness, what they dared to do. Thank God Psalm 2 was just imagination. They never followed through with it in Psalm 2. Okay. Revelations 19:19. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse, white horse, Jesus, and against his army, his bride. Psalm 2:9. Now, God was talking to Jesus. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Aha, rod of iron. Psalm 45:6 says, the scepter of thy kingdom is a right scepter. What did Moses say during the battle between the Amalekites and the Israelites in Rephidim? Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. Revelations 19:15 says, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. In Psalm 2, they conspired but never actualized it. God advised them to be smart and not even bother because Jesus will shatter them with his rod of iron. Now, in Exodus, God's people won. In Revelations 19, Jesus won. Revelations 19:17 is amazing because here we see an angel standing in the sun. Is it the same sun that we know about, that anyone who even dares to even come a little close will be melted? Now that same sun, an angel is standing in it. God and his creation is amazing. Now, let's go to Revelations 19:20. Expectedly, the beast and the false prophet were captured. They were arrested. Revelations 19:20 also talks about a lake of fire. What's a lake? A lake is like a body of water. Like you think lake, you think streams, you think rivers. Lake, liquid fire, a river of fire. Amazing. Now, this is strange because when you think of it, are people not supposed to die before going to hell? Let's read Revelations 19:20. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Alive? That beats my imagination. Like, are people not supposed to die before they go to hell? It wasn't their souls, like we were expecting, that was being cast into hell. They were being cast alive, alive. So they were not killed, alive. Wow. Revelations 19:21. And the remnants were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, Jesus, which sword proceeded out of his mouth. Remember, grace poured into thy lips. And all the fowls were filled with their flesh. The fowls, think of vultures, birds that eat dead things. They had a feast that day. A lot to feast on. Now, let's consider what an angel said when he saw that the battle was about to begin. He already predicted the end because God never loses any battle. Now, 17, Revelations 19:17. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come, gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God. Like God has prepared a feast for you guys. 18, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses, and them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great, enemies of God. So this angel was already telling them to prepare.